Thank you for having me here today. My name is Christina Shelton. I am a mom, I'm an educator, I'm a locally elected official, and I'm also a candidate for the 90th Assembly District right here in Green Bay. Over the past 8 months, COVID-19 has torn through this country and through Wisconsin, leaving businesses' doors closed, schools are shut down, families are isolated, and they're grieving due to losing loved ones and neighbors. We are living in a time of a national emergency, similar to the Great Depression, World War II, or September 11th. And in those times, elected leaders stepped up to lead our country through the crisis. They led the effort to bring us together. But this President Trump, has done the opposite, driving Americans apart by spreading false information, discrediting the work of the experts, and even those in his own administration. Much of the suffering we have all felt over the course of 2020 could have been avoided if Trump and the Wisconsin Republican-controlled legislature had taken action rather than sit on their hands. They've refused to address this crisis head-on with a bold, coordinated, multifaceted plan. Instead of bringing us together and solving this public health crisis, they've spread falsehoods and they've sowed division. Clearly, their own egos and their political careers are more important than the lives and security of Americans. We now have over 200,000 cases of COVID in Wisconsin, and the spread has accelerated dramatically over the last month. It took the state 6 months to report its first 100,000 cases, but the second 100,000 has only taken 34 days. Donald Trump and his team have been across Wisconsin holding rallies with few masks and zero social distancing. These super spreader events and the rhetoric from the White House are just one of the many reasons why almost 90% of our hospitals are at capacity and why 1 in 4 Wisconsinites who are tested test positive. As our state grapples with this deadly pandemic, the president is holding a rally here today in Green Bay, falsely claiming, as he does, that we're rounding the curve. And this is a statement that he has repeatedly made after declaring that the White House was done trying to address the pandemic. This statement is just another do nothing statement. And let me tell you, here in Wisconsin, we know exactly what do nothing looks like, because that's exactly what the Republican-controlled legislature has been doing. To date, it has been 199 days since the Assembly has passed a single bill, 199 days. Republican lawmakers in our state have done less than almost any other state to address the pandemic, despite being considered full-time employees. It's maddening. In one of the darkest periods of our country's history, the president and our state leaders have given up. They've admitted defeat, and they've used their platform to run around in an elaborate attempt to cover up for inaction in their mistakes. Here in Wisconsin, we cannot hide from this virus or downplay its gravity, because it's sending our friends and our family to the hospital. And so far, it has killed 1,948 of my fellow citizens here in Wisconsin. I want to repeat that again. 1,948. These are our friends, our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents, our sisters, our brothers, our teachers, our workers. It's astounding. And on Tuesday, 64 people died in a single day. We cannot afford another 4 years of President Trump's selfishness when the stakes are so high. In any other position, he would have been fired. And if we fail to fire him next Tuesday on Election Day, we will be forced to endure another 4 critical years without a leader when we need it the most. We need a president with a plan, and Joe Biden, with his years of experience and empathy for others, will do a fantastic job leading this country. Like FDR, he's going to lead this effort to bring the country together. And together we will enact the changes that will get us through the virus so that we come out stronger and more democratic and more secure. Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris are the only 2 presidential candidates on the November 3rd ballot that will take this pandemic seriously and save lives. Here in Wisconsin, we also need to make sure that we remember that we have great state assembly and Senate candidates running too. It's not just about the presidential, it's about those down ballot candidates. These candidates are running across the state demanding a functioning government and a bold plan. These candidates need your help, and they also need your vote. So please, today, if you haven't already, Make a plan to vote. You can go to iwillvote.com for more information. Our vote is our voice in this election. And here and in Wisconsin and across America, we have to come together. We need to come together and say as a country that we're going to support hope over fear, unity over division, and science over fiction. Thank you so much for having me here today. It's an honor to be able to speak out on the importance of this election. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christina. Next up, we have Rhonda Noble.
Hi, my name is Rhonda Noble. And me and my family's lives have forever been changed because of COVID-19. My younger son, who is only 16 years old, and I both began having COVID-related symptoms in early May. Actually, I got it from him from being in the ICU with him. Since then, our health and our economic situation has only gotten worse because of this pandemic. My son is still very sick from COVID. He's so sick that he has to stay in bed most of the day because his heart rate is so elevated, and he's on a feeding tube. It's difficult for him to do the daily tasks that you and I take for granted, like getting food, brushing our teeth, even just sitting up is a challenge, and it's devastating. It has been so painful having to see him suffer, especially when I know that it did not have to be this bad in Wisconsin. If the Republican Party had taken this seriously from the very beginning, I might not have gotten sick, and my son might not have gotten sick and be bedridden right now. President Trump claims that we're rounding the corner and that young people face nearly zero risk from this deadly disease. But that is a lie. It is a lie. Not only has COVID affected me and my family's health, but it has also affected us economically. We have spent around $20,000 on doctors, ambulances, and other necessary medical care just to survive. And that's not including the lost wages because I was out of work for 5 months. But when you are in the midst of this awful virus, you can't even focus on the economic losses because saving your child, making sure that they get through this is all that matters. The worst thing about my situation is that we now know that President Trump knew since March that this was a serious, deadly virus. And he chose to ignore the experts, to shame people for wearing masks. And now he and his White House have declared that they are done trying to contain COVID-19. This virus is not political. This is not a Democrat virus or a Republican virus. Any American can be affected by COVID, and so many have been. Now, nearly 230,000 Americans have died from COVID-19, and over 200,000 Wisconsinites have been infected as cases and deaths toll surge. Trump is only worried about campaigning and getting reelected, not about the American lives being lost every single day to this pandemic. And now Trump is coming here to Green Bay to host another super spreader rally where there will be no social distancing and very little mask wearing. Trump and the Republican Party won't take COVID seriously. They haven't. And so the only way we can end this nightmare is by electing new leaders. Leaders who will care that my 16-year-old son is so sick he can only stay in his bed. Leaders who will listen to science and help families like mine through this crisis. Those leaders are Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and that's why I'm voting for them. I know they will value my family's struggles with COVID, and they will do everything they can to get this pandemic under control. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate being able to use my voice during this election.
Thank you so much for sharing, Rhonda. We really appreciate it. Next up, we have Jarrett Brown.
Hi, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. It's an honor to be able to speak with Christina, and also to hear Rhonda's story. My name is Jarrett Brown, and I'm a factory worker and labor activist in Green Bay. Along with his failure to fight for working families, Donald Trump has failed in the fight against COVID-19. Back in March, we all became aware of the pandemic and the drastic impact it was going to have on our lives and our economy. One of the hardest hit sectors here in Northeast Wisconsin was our meatpacking industry. As a critical part of the U.S. food supply chain, it was important that packing plants remained operational, but the Trump administration did not step in to protect our workers. Without proper PPE and strict guidelines, Trump told the packing plants that the most important thing was to keep the doors open. In a public health crisis, the role of the federal government is to protect the public, and Donald Trump failed in that respect. All of this could have been prevented, and it didn't have to be this bad. Hundreds of small businesses in the Fox Valley did not need to shut down or lay off their employees. Parents did not have to consider between sending their children into harm's way or diminishing their children's education. Grandparents did not have to decide whether to see their grandkids or seclude themselves from society and their families. And factories did not have to choose between staying operational or ensuring their workers' health. I worked in meatpacking plants for 12 years and have witnessed firsthand the economic fallout that has dramatically impacted our manufacturing sector in Northeast Wisconsin. As a labor activist, these last 4 years have been incredibly disheartening. Factory workers, manufacturers, farmers, and the communities they support are hurting because of Trump's ineffective leadership. His attempts to strip away healthcare, Medicare, and Social Security would leave millions of Wisconsinites in financial ruin. The economy isn't working for working people. We live paycheck to paycheck and struggle to make ends meet. While the president brags about the stock market, we worry about whether we can afford our loved ones' medical bills, whether we can pay our mortgage, and whether we can pay for college. Throughout Wisconsin, workers have watched as Trump's erratic trade wars have caused the price of goods to go up while our wages have remained stagnant. He has reneged on his promises to drain the swamp and bring back our manufacturing jobs, but he has used the powers of the presidency to further enrich special interests, large corporations, and his own businesses. Trump's $2 trillion tax cut was a handout to his friends on the golf course and to the corporations that spend hundreds of thousands of dollars at his hotels. The money from these corporate tax cuts didn't go to the workers, but to the CEOs and shareholders who signed a larger check for themselves. The president's blatant disregard and lack of empathy for the vulnerable and underprivileged here in the Badger State is one reason why everyone must vote early or vote on election day. What we need right now is a compassionate leader, someone who will listen to the experts and implement the guidelines from the CDC and healthcare workers across the country. Vice President Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris are those leaders. They have a plan to get control of the virus and rebuild a fractured economy that has left behind hardworking Wisconsinites. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.